So with that, I'd be happy to answer any
What's the
questions.
total increase
And
you're talking about?
what would happen is you'd have an income tax increase for individuals that would be in three components would be increased. 0.25% would go to a permanent increase for property tax relief. 0.5% would be used so we can borrow and pay our bills off and then pay that back over about a 14-year period. And then a 1.5% increase would be to address this structural deficit. And this 1.5% increase, in fact, all of these taxes, which should bring in from the individual about $6.2 billion. The corporate increase, there would be a corporate increase as well, which would bring in over $1 billion. And pardon me?
What's
How
the
much?
corporate?
It would go to the same ratio that's allowed by the Constitution. So it's a 8-to-5 ratio.
But is it 4.8 to what?
I think it would be 8.4. 8.4.
4.8 to 8.4.
Right.
Okay.
So
As you know, the
Permanent?
corporate,
Or
no, that's temporary. The corporate income tax, as you know, has been a lesser and lesser percentage of collections that we have in Illinois. We also are planning on passing a cigarette tax. Cigarette tax would be very critical to this equation because that would provide more money for education. That money would go into an education fund that would be used for growth in money for education.
Would that be straight up a dollar? Or
Dollar a pack.
And how will that
It's
be
the second
distributed?
phase of the phase-in of 50 cent last year and 50 cent this year. So that's what we proposed last year. So now
So-
that would be implemented at $1 a pack.
The personal tax would be 5.25 for 4 years?
That's correct.
And it would roll back to 3.375 after 4 years?
Well, there would be 0.75 that would still go beyond the 4 years because you have to have 0.25% for the property tax and 0.5% to continue to pay the borrowing to pay the bills on time.
So after 4 years, it's 3.75? After 4 years, the permanent would be 3.75
I think that sounds right.
as opposed to 3.5?
You said something about just under 2%, and you gave that 1/8. So I'm just wondering, are we at 1 7/8 there? For
No, I'm sorry, I misspoke. It's 1.5 that is for the structural deficit, and that amount would be temporary and would end at the end of 4 years. Now, this is an outline. The governor's still meeting with caucuses right now, and there could be some tweaks to this, but this is the basic outline, and I doubt that
How
there'll
much
be
would you
anything
borrow
changed.
for the bills?
The borrowing is about a little over $8 billion, $8.5 billion, I think.
And that's for pension, or that's just for bills? That's not including, or what's the
Not
pension borrowing plan?
No, it's not pensions, not pensions. The pension for this fiscal year has to be borrowed. That would be included in this plan and paid back over an 8-year period.
The 3.7 billion.
That's correct. And then we have a category of bills, vendors that we owe money to, state group health insurance and corporate income tax refunds. The total is about $8.5 billion. Those will be paid immediately. People will get paid money that's been owed to them. It'll help the economy when we infuse that amount of money back into the economy when we pay those bills off.
How
And
does the
your
borrowing is-
understanding that the governor and Speaker Madigan are on board with this? This is an agreement amongst everybody?
Yes, it is. Yes, and we presented it to our caucus, and we didn't take a vote or anything, but we had a good positive reaction to
The
it.
Speaker
Is
is
it without Republican
Corporate
votes?
rate, where's the corporate rate?
I hope we get
going?
Republicans. Corporate rate goes to 8.4,
Wait,
but it's
Plus
temporary.
Personal, plus the replacement tax, right?
Well, we don't change.
Well, right, but then that'll be an effective corporate income tax rate of over 10%.
Well,
this
if that's the
bill
way
passes.
you want to phrase it, if you want to add that to it, yes, but it's a smaller and smaller percentage of the total every year.
Do local governments get their cut of this increase?
No, they don't get the increase, but they don't get any reduction from what they get now.
To clarify on the borrowing, it's $8 billion for the bills plus $3.7 billion for the
I think it's
bond.
about 8.5 to
For the
pay the
bills.
bills.
And then
And
3.7.
then 3.7
for
is for the bonding for
Okay.
fiscal year 2011.
the bond.
Well, the speaker has said it can't be an all-Democratic show, it has to be bipartisan. What's the status of that
Well,
now?
that would be the question for the House.
And
Do you-
how
do
do
you
we
think this will
expect this
pass?
to move?
I think it'll pass the Senate. It has to pass the House first, though.
Is it going to originate in the House?
Yes.
And when do you have any idea when there'll be a vote in the House?
Well, they're in Sunday, so I think perhaps as early as Sunday.
So what is the total amount of revenue this raises then?
I think it's 6.2 from the individual increase, and then the corporate is approximately $1 billion.
What's the cigarette tax?
377 million.
How is the education fund distributed?
There's no distribution, it's just a fund that we can determine later on. There's no strings attached to it, but it's for education.
When would I get my homeowner's rebate check?
You get your credit this year for your fiscal year 10.
Credit.
Yeah, you'll get your credit for your tax year 10 when you fill out your income taxes for 10. But for 11, that'll be about a year from now. That's when we would send out checks for property tax rebates. It's approximately $775 million in property tax relief
Additional or total?
total.
And what will the
How does that
average,
be distributed?
property owner get in a
They'll-
rebate check?
Everybody would get the same amount. It'd be about $325. A check for $325. Every year you get $325. There's 2.4 million taxpayers who have paid property taxes.
So would this eliminate the deduction as it exists now?
After this year, then it would supplant that, right. So about 80% of the folks who pay property taxes would get a break,
What about
a
renters?
greater break. There's no renters component in this bill.